Hey, how
Hi
are
Dee,
you?
how are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy to see
Good.
your face and
Yeah.
excited to get this conversation going.
Yeah, no, well, Jewel was great helping me through the technical bumps, so I'm right here. Very good.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. I'd say that.
Well, we'll wait for a little bit for more people to come in and then we can get started.
Okay. Okay.
So, today we will be talking about pansexuality and panromantic, panromanticism.
I think
So,
that's
I'm excited to
reasonable.
talk about this because at one point, identified as pansexual, so it'll be nice to share this information with my audience. So we can get started. My name is Soul for everybody who's joining. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am one of the social media influencers for community health and also one of the art educators for the corner. As you guys know, for the past few months, Whitman-Walker's community health department has expanded its outreach efforts to the social media platform. So we're covering various topics about HIV, STI topics, sexual health practices, access to care, social determinants of health, and general public health intervention. Our series of outreach sessions also focus on the current pandemic and ways to manage your sexual, personal, and mental health. So just remember that the community health team is here to support you. So thank you all for joining us today. Um, like I said, we'll be talking about pansexuality and panromantic identities. But Sunday, May 24th, is Pan Visibility Day. So our segment today will focus on just that, educating communities on pansexuality. And to help me lead the conversation today, we have Dee McGreeny, who is the Assistant Director of Community Commitment and Training at Whitman-Walker. So let's get started, and don't forget to participate in the comments below. The space is for us. So thank you for joining us, Dee. Can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Dee McGreeny, and as Sol said, I'm the Assistant Director of Community Commitment and Training. And really, what that means is I help facilitate, offer trainings for doctors, nurses, social workers on culturally competent care for LGBT folks. Do they understand the culture, the health risks, and how to successfully interact with the community? One of my great loves is community education and with a focus on women's health. So that's what I do. And I hope to offer docs and nurses and create a situation where community can access medical care that helps them continue in care, that experiences are good and productive for the lives that we lead.
Well, thank you for your work, Dee. Some of you may have heard of people who identify as pansexual, like Janelle Monáe, Ezra Miller, Jazz Jennings, Miley Cyrus. Oh, let me get my camera together. So, if you know what pansexual means and how this community navigates space, that's great. But if not, we're about to get into defining some of the terms that can help you understand this language and the visibility of this community. One piece of the way that you identify includes sexual orientation, and sexual orientation is a spectrum. So, your sexual orientation can change throughout your life, like mine has, and that's completely okay. Sexual orientation can be defined as patterns of sexual, romantic, and emotional attractions. And one sense of identity is based on those attractions. So it's important to note that gender identity is different from sexual identity. Sexual orientation. So, can you share a little bit more about the differences between those two for us?
I sure can. What I'd like to do is give you some. It's always easier to even think about ourselves if we have words or concepts to attach to how we feel. So I'm going to share some information with you from GLAD, and GLAD is Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. And what they shared was sexual orientation is the scientifically accurate term for an individual's enduring physical, romantic, and emotional attraction to members of the same or opposite sex, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, and heterosexual orientation. Hmm. Okay, the National Center for Trans Equality defines gender identity as your internal sense of your gender, how you feel inside. For example, your knowledge that you're a man, a woman, or another gender. In contrast, gender expression is how a person presents their gender to the outside. So, how do we perform? How do we show up in public space or in private to demonstrate our gender? Let's see. Gender identity can be defined as the internal sense of being male or female or non binary. And when we talk about LGBT communities, we're talking about gender variant and sexually variant communities with different identities around race and age, countries of origin, socioeconomic status, health needs, and all these impact. And nobody's health and health care is in a little bubble, that we're all individuals, and all those variables come into play when we're trying to access health care and how we interact with medical providers. So, the most commonly discussed categories of sexual orientation are heterosexuality, homosexuality, and bisexuality. However, they're not the only ones, the only categories of sexual identification. And I'll give you a short list here of ones that are not heard of as much. We have aromantic here, and having little or no romantic attraction to others. And let's see, they might very well want to be in relationships, but have no real desire to have romantic relationships in the traditional way that most of us think of, one person linked with another. Asexual is having little or no sexual attraction to others. So, like aromantics, asexual folks can want romantic relationships, but without the desire to have sex. Bisexual folks, sexual attraction to men and women, and that's that binary thing. Bisexuals may keep their range of attraction limited to two specific categories. But again, folks, um, orientation and can change over time. Pansexual, which we're here to focus on today, the prefix means coming from all. So pansexual people, they feel attracted to people of any gender or gender identity, male, female, trans, genderqueer. Panoramic or pan, well, I like panoramic actually, but panromantic is a person who is romantically attracted to people of all gender identities. Thus, a person's gender does not factor into whether or not you are romantically attracted to them.
Thank you for enlightening us with those definitions. I know a common misconception about bi folks is that they seek to reinforce a rigid gender binary, but the reality is that many bi people have the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one sex or gender, and not necessarily at the same time, in the same way, or to the same degree. Um, which is something that advocate Robin Oakes describes. The pan identity presents an additional opportunity to express attraction to multiple genders. Dee, in your professional experience, how do you see identities and sexual orientation interacting with each other?
Oh, okay. Well, uh, I think people want things in an accord. So I feel this way and I present this way. And that's not always the case. And stigma has a lot to do with that in terms of how we identify and how we present ourselves. Do we feel safe in our own identity? And do we feel safe in the way we demonstrate that, either to others or just in the visual sense? So the idea is to try and remove some of the stigma through educational events like this, through our own thinking, and through exploring real conversations with real people, not to um, so much pull in for personal information from them, but to try and gain more understanding of how it is that we're all living. I think that that's the important part. So where are
Um,
we?
so what does it really mean to identify as pansexual?
Oh, I think. Oh, are you? Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Yes. Let's see. I think you talked about it earlier. It's that idea that folks are not limited or only attracted to an idea of binary. They're looking at person and their resonance with that person first. So male, female, gender queer. However, who do I meet, and then how do we interact? And is there a sexual or a romantic, a sexual and romantic component to that interaction? I think that's how I would think about pansexuality. Yeah.
So we just use and will continue to use the term sex within larger words like sexual, sexually, sexuality, homosexual, heterosexual, and pansexual a lot. But it is important to note that to not hypersexualize communities.
Mm,
Terms like homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, and pansexual simply refer to who a person is attracted to. The identifying term does not equate to a more or less sexually active person. So don't hypersexualize or impose ideas of increased sexual practices within these communities. But let's get back to the definitions. Can you share just a little bit more information on pansexuality?
I can. I have some information here from Stanford University, and it's a big chunk, so I'm really just going to kind of deliver it to you. Pansexual is a term that emerged in recent years as a descriptor of sexual orientation. The word pansexual is derived from the Greek prefix pan, meaning all, and let's see, yeah, and encompasses all who feel that they are sexually, emotionally, or spiritually capable of having relationships with all genders and sexual identities. Let's see. Mm. Pansexual individuals have the capacity for attraction to others regardless of their gender or biological sex, which can involve someone who is male, female, transgender, intersex, or non binary and identifies with any possible sexual orientation. However, this does not mean that pansexuals automatically like everyone or have no physical preferences. The identity of pansexual is commonly used to express the openness and fluidity of sexuality. I think that's really the important part is one, that people do view pansexuals and bisexuals alike as not having a lot of boundaries in terms of being in romantic relationships or what people think of as quote unquote true.